Welcome to my video, and this week I thought we could talk about Distress Oxides. Have you used these ink pads yet? What do you think about them? Do you love them? Do you hate them? Or are you a bit sort of meh about them? Let me know. I would love to hear all of your views about them and how you like to use them as well. So I've been using them quite extensively this week. I've tried them out. Yeah, a bit late to the party. I've only just opened mine. And I have to admit, I was a little bit unsure about them to start with, but as the week progressed, I found some fun ways of using them that I quite enjoyed. And one of them, I quite like the way that you can get a lovely textured background with them. So I've got an art journal page to share with you this week from start to finish. So shall we get started?
So I'm going to get started by just adding a layer of gesso to my surface, and today I'm using my junk journal. And I'm also going to be cutting out some pages from my junk journal too, and treated them in exactly the same way, so adding a layer of gesso to them too. And then I'll just let the gesso dry completely before I move on to the next layer. Once the gesso is dry, it's all about building up layers with the Distress Oxide ink. Now, you've probably seen lots of different ways of using your Distress inks, and as I'm concentrating on getting that kind of nice sort of like spot and dot kind of texture, I found that this is my personal favourite way of doing that. Kind of works for me. Press the ink pad directly onto a plastic sheet or a craft mat, and then I spritz it with water quite lightly. I don't want to flood it with water, but I don't want to add such a small amount of water that you get the shape of the ink pad transferred onto your page. So there's kind of a happy halfway house between those two. And then I'll just press the journal page into the ink and lift off, and keep repeating a couple of times, and then I'll let that dry for a bit and move on to one of the cutout sheets. Now, for the cutout sheets, I'm not as worried about getting that dotty look. I want to get that dotty look, but I'm also happy if I get a good coverage of colour as well. So these ones, you know, I'm just going to slide them through, I'll press them onto the ink. I'll just go with how the mood takes me, really. And I'm not going to let any ink go to waste, so even the little bits that are left over, I'm going to spritz some more water on them and just run one of the other pages through to get a light coverage. And I'm going to keep on working like this until I've built up enough layers and I'm happy with the background on both the journal page and also those spare pieces of paper as well. I only have 3 of the ink pads at the moment, and I'm mixing up the colours as I work. At this point as I'm working, I'm not really sure how this art journal is going to turn out and what kind of theme I'm going for, but I know that I want one of the spare pieces of paper to be predominantly blue, one of them to be predominantly yellow, and the other one predominantly red. And that's what I'm kind of working on at this present time. It kind of changes up a little bit later, as you'll see. But I think this is quite a good way to work with these inks, because you can chop and change between the pages, building layers on each page as you work, and it's a great way of getting that really random texture and look. I have to admit, I have tried doing the more intense coverage with the Distress Oxide and putting down really intense layers so they're full of pigment and colour and not quite as pastel-y as these ones turn out. But I'm not so sure I really liked that look. And actually I prefer this look, particularly with these colours. If I had other colours maybe it'd be different, but with these 3 colours I kind of like this pastel light dotty look. But how about you? What looks have you been enjoying with the Distress Oxides? Let me know. So working on the gessoed paper really helps to give the pastel look on the finished piece. Of course, you don't need to gesso your paper first, but as I'm working in my junk journal, I wanted to knock back the print that's already on those pages, and the gesso also adds another texture to the piece. So at this point I still don't know how I want this page to turn out, what I want the final look to be, but I decided that it might be a good idea to change up how I'm applying the Distress Oxides to this page, just to give it another look. So I've got a cut up piece of kitchen sponge, yep, just ordinary kitchen sponge, and I'm just using it to apply the ink over a couple of the corners on the page. And then I'm just going to use the good old swiping the ink pad over the edge. And it's around about here that a theme comes to me and I decide to make this into a floral journal page. So I need a bit of green. And to make my green, I'm just going to press my Fossilized amber and broken china ink pads into my craft mat, spritz them, and then swirl that predominantly blue extra piece of paper into that ink and try and mix them up that way. And to add a little bit of green to the bottom of my art journal page, I'm just going to swipe it through any of the remainder of that green ink. To even up the sky, I'm going to come back in with my kitchen sponge and add a little bit more of that broken china in the top part of my art journal page. Doesn't take much, and then I can just move on to cutting out my shapes. And I'm just going to go for ordinary, really quick, simple circles, but not uniform circles, make them slightly uneven just to add a little bit more interest. Oh, and you remember that green piece of paper? I mean, it was quite green, wasn't it? It's not my imagination. You can roll back, see how green it was. Yeah, bit of a fail. It dried a completely different colour. So I'm going to green it up, try again. And because I'm trying to cut corners, I'm trying it out directly on the piece of paper itself. The oxide ink remains wet on that gesso surface just long enough for me to do a little bit of blending, but it's still not quite as green as I want it to be. So the next thing I'm trying is pressing those ink pads back out onto that craft sheet, mix them up on the craft sheet, and then apply it to that piece of paper. And that works a lot better, as you kind of hope it would. Okay, back on track, so we can now cut out some leaves and stems and carry on building this floral image. fiddle whilst I try and get the design where I want it to be. And I'm trying to avoid them all being in a line, and they keep wanting to go back into a line. But eventually I get a layout that I like, and then a good idea, because they're not all glued down yet, is to take a photograph of them. I'm not going to glue them to the page just yet, but I will glue the circles together. Then I'm going to transfer the elements to a board because I want to add a little bit more texture just behind them. So with that earlier photo that I've taken just as reference, I'm just going to add a little bit of scribble writing to add a little bit more texture to this page. And I'm using a Unipin fine line marker for this. It's currently my favourite pen for adding this kind of detail. Of course, stamping would work really well here too to add that extra bit of texture. Define the flowers a little bit more using some of the Distress Oxides, but I decided that I would go with the line marker pen that I used to do the scribble writing, and this way it will match with the scribble writing too. So I'm just using that to go around the circles and also on the stems. So I think this might be my current favourite way of using Distress Oxides and building up all of that texture, that lovely dot and splatter look that you get with this particular method. I'm also really loving this pastel look. I mean, what do you think about it? Is it something you'd enjoy playing around with? Let me know. Also let me know if you would like some more Distress Oxide videos from me, or if you think that there's too many out there already, then that's fine as well, tell me. If you've liked this video and found it helpful, then please do like it and share it with your friends. And also, if you're not one of my subscribers, please think about subscribing as well. I bring out new art and craft videos every week. So don't forget to click my face icon to subscribe and turn on the notifications so you know when my videos come out. Plus you might want to check out some of these other videos I've made. I always love seeing any work that you do that's been inspired by whatever I've shared, so please do share it with me on social media. You can find all of my links below. And you never know, you might get a shout out in one of my videos. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next week.